G'day guys, Joe, my Big J here. Welcome to another edition of Aussie Boxing Talk, the show literally punches you right between the fucking eyes. Now, so earlier today, David Benavidez, WBC light heavyweight champ, actually I think he's a WBA as well, kicked the living shit out of Anthony Yard. I think it was a 7th round stoppage. Benavidez kicked the absolute crap out of Anthony Yard. He announced it after the end of the fight that he will be moving up to cruiserweight to take on Zurdo Ramirez in an all-Mexican huge fight at cruiserweight. And the question is, where does this leave Jai Opetaia? So as we know, Jai Opetaia will be fighting in a couple of weeks on the Gold Coast on December 6th against Sin Cara. He's mandatory for Jai's IBF Cruiserweight and Ring Magazine Championship. But it begs the question that Jai Opetaia has been chasing Zurdo Ramirez for a unification bout for the last 2 years. Zurdo Ramirez is injured, and now he's coming back. He's going to fight David Benavidez, who's a blown-up 168er, at cruiserweight. And I'm like, it's an interesting fight, but where does this leave Jai Opetaia? Like, he either has to keep defending his belt against pure fucking low-level competition because the cruiserweight division is shit. Like, the only real person he could fight besides the champions is Chris Smith, or get Bivol or Benavidez to come up to cruiserweight, and that's not going to happen because they're having their rubber match. So it seems that Jai Opetaia just can't seem to catch a break. He's continuing to fight these low-level guys because that's all there is in the cruiserweight division, unless some top people like Bivol or Benavidez or David Bennett. I can't remember his name. Benavidez or whatever his name is. David Benavidez. So, but if Benavidez wins, there's a fight for Jai Opetaia. I think Ramirez will probably beat him. But the one thing I found very interesting about David Benavidez is that he looked so out of shape. His arms were skinny, his gut was fat, and yet he kicked the absolute crap out of Andre Ward. He looked like a cruiserweight. Anthony Yard, sorry, not Andre Ward. Anthony Yard looked like he weighed 200 pounds. And Benavidez kicked the living shit out of him. Just beat the shit out of him for 7 rounds. So, and I think if Jai Opetaia comes up against David Benavidez, it might be an interesting fight. Jai could be in a bit of strife here. So, no wonder why Canelo was ducking David Benavidez for so long, because Canelo probably knew that David Benavidez would kick the living shit out of him. So, it's interesting to see where Jai goes from here after his mandatory after his mandatory fight on December 6th. I mean, a 42-year-old Budle Jack, is that the only option for Jai now? Unless, there's Chris Smith, which would be an interesting fight. A 42-year-old Budle Jack is the WBC champion, so bar fighting another bunch of nobodies on the Gold Coast, and unfortunately Jai Opetaia can barely sell out a bingo hall at this point. So, yeah, even though the card is not too bad, I don't think it's going to do very well at all, which I don't say that. Sorry, I've got indigestion. I don't say that I don't take any joy in saying that. I think that's the way it is, because Jai Opetaia, bar the bloody debacle that Tasman Fighters put on a week or so ago, with that press conference that no one knew about, no one turned up to, and it was bloody out in the friggin', outside the arena in the wind where you couldn't hear shit, and Jai Opetaia wasn't even there. It was, yeah, I mean, Joe Opetaia continues to get a bit of the rough end of the stick, but it's interesting to see where he does go after he finishes with the Sin Cara fight. Whether he's just going to have another easy voluntary defense or fight the next mandatory. As I said in other videos, if you're a world champion, there's only two types of people you should be fighting. You either fight unifications or you fight mandatory. That's it. When you're a world champion, they're the only two fights you should be having. Mandatories or unifications. If you're undisputed, you're only fighting unifications. And the one thing I don't like in boxing, and the WBO is guilty of this because it's in their rules, is that if you're a current champion, like Terence Crawford has been a WBA champion for like a decade. Right? He started at 135. I think he won his first belt was at 135 WBO. Went up to 140, won that. He was the mandatory for that. Went up to 147 against Jeff Horn, as we know, was mandatory for that. And, you know, if he wants... Well, now he's the 168 champion. If he wants to go up to 175, no problem at all. He'll be the mandatory for Zurdo Ramirez. Not Zurdo Ramirez. Here's one. Bivol. If Crawford wants to go up to 175, he's automatically the mandatory for Bivol. Because he's the current champ. So, and that's something I don't like. I think that if you're a champion and you move up a division, you start off at scratch, just like everyone else. Right? I don't think you should get I don't think you should be able to get a title shot at all. So, having said that, I mean, Devin Haney just won the 147 title today, but he wasn't the 140 champ. That's Lopez, but he was the 135 champ. So, you know, I'm not a fan of that. I'm like, just because you go up a division, you should have to earn your way just like everyone else. At the very least, you should fight, you know, someone for a mandatory status. So, I don't think just because you move up a division, you're a champion, you should automatically get a shot at that champion. I don't think that's right. But that's just me. So, where to for Joe Opetaia? What sort of 2026 is Joe Opetaia going to have? Only time will tell, but considering that Benavidez is fighting Ramirez in, I think it's May the 4th, is it? Is it Star Wars Day or Mexican Independence Day, or it's in May. Yeah, so and what's Joe going to do? Because Joe's going to need a fight around then, because he's fighting in December. He's going to need another fight around May. I thought personally he should have went over to Saudi Arabia and got in the ring with Benavidez and say, if you want to fight a cruiserweight, I'll give you one. But, of course, the Mexican thing is going to be huge. That's huge drawing power for Mexicans. Yeah, but unfortunately, Joe Opetaia, I really think that this heavyweight debate needs to stop, and he needs to focus on seeing if those top light heavyweights are moving up, because he'd make a hell of a lot more money. Unless he fought Usyk, right, Joe Opetaia would make more money fighting a Bivol and a Benavidez and a Benavidez than he would going up fighting any of the current heavyweights. I think that's my personal opinion. Sorry. That's my personal opinion. I think that he should do that. I think he should... Don't worry about going heavyweight and get the light heavyweights to move up to him. Because there's some great fights there. There really is. Or, Chris Bill and Smith, but yeah, anyway. In similar fashion, could 2026 see Devin Haney fight Liam Paro? It's a bit of a stretch, and it probably won't happen until this time next year. Devin Haney's just won the WBA 147 belt. Liam Paro is fighting Paddy Donovan for the right to fight Lewis Crocker for his IBF belt. So, if Liam Paro can get over Paddy Donovan and then fight Lewis Crocker in next year, he could potentially line up a fight with Devin Haney at unification, which would be another massive fight that they could bring to Australia. So, Devin Haney's already been here twice. Why not come a third time? Because he's 2-0 in Australia, so he's got a very good record for world title fights in Australia. So I want to come here a third time. But that's a lot of ducks have to be in a row for that fight to happen. But I think it's a good opportunity for both Devin and Liam if it happens. Of course, Liam's got to get past Paddy Donovan and Lewis Crocker for that fight to even be mentioned. Jai Opetaia, I really feel sorry for him because he is our best fighter, but he's only the best fighter because he's the only one with a title. And I will say this, if George, Tim, Liam, Jason Maloney, Andrew Maloney all had world titles, even if Liam Wilson got up or Sam Goodman got up, Jai Opetaia would not be the number one fighter in the country. Not even close. Not even close. Because if Tim beat Buckram or even won Fondora the second time, Tim would be number one. If George managed to hold on to his belts or beat Hitchinson, if George beat Haney twice, he'd be number one easy. Easy. Even if Liam Paro still held his 147 belt. If he beat Hitchins, all right, and then defended against George, he'd be number one. So, and I don't say that with any joy. It's just the fact that Jai Opetaia is in one of the weakest divisions in boxing for the men. And the only fight that he can get is the Zurdo Ramirez, and David Benavidez is beating him to it. So the only solution now is a 42-year-old Badu Jack. So I don't think that will politically happen. So it's all a bit of a mystery of what's going to happen over the next 12 months. 2026 should be an interesting year for Australian boxing. This year, I don't think there's any more world titles. Yeah, well, there's obviously Jai's world title fight, but this year for world titles has been horrendous. We haven't won shit. I think the Australian good luck charm has run out because everybody's lost, with the exception of Jai. I mean, who's had world title fights this year? Sky lost her belt. Shanika won hers. Well, the women have done quite well. The men have done horribly. As I said, we've got 4 world champions at the moment in Australia. 3 of them women. Obviously, Jesley Robinson, and at the moment, the less said about her, the better. Miss OnlyFans. She's a WBO and IBF middleweight champion. Shay Keneally, I think, still the WBA light heavyweight champion. And, of course, Shanika's the undisputed bantamweight title holder. But the boys have had a shocker. We haven't had any upsets of the year this year. We haven't had any decent world title fights. Tim's lost. Sam Goodman lost. Jason Maloney, I think, lost his title last year. Yeah, it was last year. The Maloneys haven't got any world title fights. Liam Wilson hasn't got anything. So we've had significantly less world title fights for the men. Not necessarily for the women, but for the men. And it's been a shocker. 2025 has not been a great year for Australian boxing in regards to world title fights. All right? I'd have to actually sit down and crunch the numbers. And of course, George lost to Hitchins earlier in the year. Hitchins, sorry, not Hitchinson, Hitchins. It's Richardson Hitchins is his name. Bloody hell. So it hasn't been a great year for Australian boxing for world titles for the men. For the women, it's been quite successful. But Shay Keneally don't think Shay Keneally's fought this year. But Desley's done well. Shanika's obviously, at the pinnacle of her career. So it's been a bit of an interesting year. But I will do a year in review after the Jai Opetaia fight because I know there's still Tim Tszyu at December 16th. So after that fight, I'll be doing a full year in review. And that's it for this video. I also will be bringing, because there's a lot of significant fights that are coming up in review for this month. I mean, today's the 23rd, I think, 23rd, 24th of November. And over the next week, there's been a lot of significant fights, world title fights that have happened. Just off the top of my head, Danny Green and Tony Otava. Chock was on Snimoki was December 1. Michael Katsidius, he fought his fight against Mendez. I think it was the 28th of November. There's a lot of significant fights. Actually, no, Green versus Vlodchek was November 30th. So there's a lot of fights and review coming up for my day in review section of the channel. So as always, guys, take a bull, wrestle clock, cut yourselves the fuck up, and we'll see you again soon.